Welcome to The Explainer. We're going to jump right in and talk about Sharif Osman Hadi, a student leader in Bangladesh whose death has left a huge mark on the nation. We're going to unpack why his story, a story that was cut short, is still shaping the country's future today. So, let's start with this idea, which is a little cynical but, pretty true. Public memory, well, it doesn't last forever. Even for heroes, right? Eventually, the mourning fades and life just goes on. But what happens when it doesn't? What happens when that memory just refuses to fade?
And that really brings us to the heart of the puzzle here. Look at Abu Saeed. He was the first martyr of the 2024 uprising. His sacrifice, as tragic as it was, had a clear result. It helped bring down a regime. His story is, in a way, complete. But then you have Sharif Osman Hadi. His project was just getting started. His struggle feels completely unresolved. So the big question is, why is the reaction to Hadi's death so different, so persistent?
To really get this, we've got to first look at why Hadi's martyrdom feels so profoundly, and I mean profoundly, unfinished.
Think about this for a second. More than a month after he was killed, his funeral still drew hundreds of thousands of people. The public grief was still so raw, so unprocessed. That tells you something much deeper is going on here. This wasn't just about mourning another fallen hero. It was a sign that his story was far from over.
And here's the key. Unlike other martyrs, where their sacrifice led to a clear outcome, Hadi's death just left a story hanging mid-sentence. All that public emotion, all that energy, it's still unspent, because the cause he was fighting for is still very much alive. His death didn't bring closure, it ripped open a huge void. Okay, so let's shift gears a bit and talk about who Sharif Osman Hadi actually was. Who was this man at the center of this massive cultural storm?
What made Hadi so unique was this incredible mix of traits. I mean, he was not your typical polished politician. He was from a lower middle-class family, had both the religious and a secular education. He talked in a rural dialect that millions of people recognized as their own. And his faith was front and center, which connected deeply in a majority Muslim country. He might have been physically unassuming, but man, his words had power. He was an outsider who had found a way to get a seat at the table, and that made him dangerous to the establishment.
And that right there, that's why he was so magnetic. In a political world that was just exhausted with careful, calculated speeches, Hadi felt real. His sincerity, some might even say his recklessness, was like a lightning bolt. He wasn't just talking at people, he was saying the very things they were thinking, the things they were too afraid to say out loud themselves.
Now, to truly understand Hadi's importance, we have to zoom out and look at the cultural battlefield he stepped onto, because this was never just about politics, it was about identity.
For decades, the ruling Awami League Party basically perfected this. It's a concept called cultural hegemony. Sounds academic, but it's simple. It's when one group's worldview becomes the accepted normal worldview for everyone. They did this by controlling the media, the schools, the arts, everything.
And you can see how this thing grew, or maybe how it got twisted over time. What started as a vision for the country's identity, rooted in its history, well, it hardened into this rigid, unchangeable dogma under Sheikh Hasina's long rule. History got rewritten, and if you didn't fit into this very specific mold, you were pushed to the margins. A whole lot of people felt like they just didn't recognize their own country anymore. And that created a deep, simmering resentment.
So when the 2024 uprising finally exploded, it was never just about politics. All those state-approved statues and murals being torn down, that wasn't random vandalism. No way. It was this raw, visible eruption of all that pent-up frustration. It was people trying to take back their own culture, their own story.
And it's right in the middle of all this that Hadi makes his move, transforming from a sharp-witted critic into a real political force that the establishment just couldn't ignore anymore. And his rise was just incredibly fast. He started out making viral clips on social media, just picking apart the hypocrisy of the ruling class. Then he takes it a step further and builds something new, the Inqilab Cultural Center. But he realized pretty quickly that just talking about culture wasn't enough. You needed actual political power. The moment he decided to run for parliament, everything changed.
His campaign was a total David versus Goliath story. I mean, the contrast couldn't be more stark. His opponents had massive billboards and huge motorcades. Hadi had leaflets and handshakes. They spoke with this polished, elite accent. He spoke the everyday language of the people. And that raw authenticity, boosted by social media, was his secret weapon.
But what really made him a phenomenon? What was the one thing at the very core of his appeal? It was this. After 16 years of a government defined by corruption and backroom deals, he presented himself as the exact opposite. He wasn't offering some complex 10-point plan. He was offering something way more powerful: his integrity.
So, let's pull all these threads together now and finally answer that first question. What exactly is the Hadi Effect, and why is it so powerful?
Here it is. The Hadi Effect is really the incredible power of an unfinished story. His influence is so strong precisely because his project was cut short. He was never tested by the messy compromises of being in power. His integrity was never challenged. He gets to remain this symbol of pure, untested potential. So his influence lasts not because of what he did, but because of everything he might have done. The battles he was fighting are still being fought today. In death, his image has become this powerful symbol that others can use. And maybe most importantly, his killing didn't just end a life. For a whole lot of people, it felt like a possible future for the entire country was stolen away.
And that leaves us with one last, really big thought. Hadi's work isn't finished. The ideas he fought for are still out there, very much alive. Which poses a huge question for Bangladesh's future. When a story like this is left unfinished, who gets to pick up the pen and write the final chapter?